Interview. Moritz Friedenberg spricht mit
Boygenius. Thanks for having you right before your show here in Cologne.
Yeah,
thanks for coming.
Also being here. Yes.
I think the last month must have been very exciting for you. So you released a new album. It went viral in the indie scene. You played Coachella. You had some radio plays, and you did an interview with NOXX. So much exciting things. So how you have all perceived these things?
I like it. I like it too.
I have like sensory overload every day in a really, yeah.
But do you like it?
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like life is in sport mode.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to put it all together and to organize it in your head, but you already have some highlights when you look back to the last month?
Oh my God, yeah.
Well, it's funny you said Nardwar, because you're an interviewer. I bet he's an icon for you and all interviewers. Yeah, that was really fun. Honestly, the shows are the highlight of every day. What else? What else cool?
Yeah, but I think Nardwar was something very special. Did you guys prepare for the interview? Because it's like not the normal interview situation. It's more like Nardwar against all the other people.
Yeah.
He was really nice to us. He only brought up like precious things from our past.
Yeah, so nice.
Okay, so you didn't have to think about all your past and all your family and friends, or did you do this?
I was ready I was like, what most horrible thing I've ever done will he bring up? And then he was just bringing up like inspiring kindergarten teachers. And I was like, oh yeah, Miss Silverman. Cool.
So cute. Yeah.
That sounds nice. So if someone knows you, it's clear you have a very strong and emotional fan base. It's like the persons are burning for you. They are crying in front of the stage, things like that. I'm thinking about, is it something when you write new songs that you have this motivation because all the people are caring about you, or it's more like rising responsibility and pressure?
I feel it as trust being built. Like, now that I know people care, it makes me feel like I can say more things. Whereas at the beginning, I was just kind of talking to myself and trying to make something like just to my taste. And I still am trying to make things that are my taste, and I am talking to myself. But like thematically, it feels like people are paying attention, and like I can kind of trust the audience to treat it more carefully than just throwing it to a bunch of strangers.
I like you describing it as trust being built, because then it's like, yeah, and then the relationship between fan and audience does have to be very much like if someone was pretending to you, it would be because they didn't trust you. Like the same as in a relationship, if you were like acting or like upholding a conceit or like, you know, maintaining a false pretense, like that would be a reason for other people, because you don't trust your partner or because you don't trust your friend. So then it's like the more that we trust, the more it is also opening us to be like evaluated by fans. And sometimes that feels bad, but for the most part it feels really good. And I also think it's a good thing to model, because I see people doing it with each other. And like, you know, even though it is kind of weird to be the subject of discourse, and me at least, because I think I'm the most off the internet guy, but sometimes, if I were, I think I would be putting my foot in my mouth a lot more. But I think, like, watching us be, like, a springboard for discourse is kind of nice, because it so quickly becomes not about us at all. And I think I really didn't understand the value that bands like that had in my life when I was seeing them be, like, a piece of discourse in, like, Spin magazine when I was a kid or something, you know?
But that's cool that you still have this connection, that you can remember how it was for you to watch all these other bands. And it sounds like that the bond between you and the fans are getting stronger and stronger with every record.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, and it's also like, well, I think even with, like, Phoebe, you talk about this, you know, right before a letter, where you're, like, asking something, like, it isn't even, like, off the bat hostile to ask it. It like takes a lot of trust for you to say.
For reference,
Oh,
I ask people to put their phones away for a song because I was noticing this thing on my last album cycle where I would like go make eye contact with some kid in the front, and they would immediately, like, if they didn't have their phone out, I would like go make eye contact with a kid who didn't have their phone out, and then if I made eye contact with them, they would immediately take it out, and it was just like disheartening and weird and unconnected, you know. So like, if I give people the opportunity to not do that, it's really nice.
But it's sweet that instead of like going like expecting people to act how they have been socialized to act, and be recording something on their phone because they have the capability to, and then resenting them and swatting it out of their hand, like and being like, fuck you, everybody's on their phone. Yeah. You being like, can you please for me? Like, that is giving them the benefit of your trust and drawing them in a way where you're like, you are in this conversation with me about interacting. Exactly. That's cool.
I think that counterintuitively, like, asking for things from fans is a way to acknowledge the mutual respect, or like acknowledging when there's a imbalance of the respect can kind of like humanize yourself. Like, if you're just performing and people are just buying your records, it's easy for people to see you as a commodity and you to start to just see yourself as a commodity. But when it is like a relationship, I feel way more human looking in people's faces and like, making these requests and not thinking that people are dumb and not thinking that people don't have the capacity to care. Like, obviously people do for each other all the time, so why not the artists that you care about as well?
Yeah, I think with the handy thing, some people just don't know it different. They grew up with it and do it like normal life. But there are also people who are raging and just enjoying the moment. Phoebe, you stage dived in Denmark. Is it right? I just saw a picture. It looked fun.
It is fun, but again, people have their phones out and then they drop me. So then last night, like, they dropped my feet in Denmark. So then last night in Berlin, I was just like, if you're holding my body, put your phone away. And they do, you know. So I think just today you have to have a little bit more instruction for the rock and roll show, but that's fine. It's a lot of really young kids too. Like, I know that you and I grew up going to shows where people are jumping into the pit and stuff, but like, you know, it's been COVID, it's been insane, and I think like giving people the opportunity to live in the moment. Yeah. But it is funny to have to tell people to hold me.
Yeah, and then when they laughed at it, it's like they laughed at it because that should have occurred to everyone naturally. But the fact that like it seems ridiculous to be reminded, but it might not have occurred to you if you were like, I want to capture this moment. And also, it's like, if they're 15 and the last 3 years for them have been COVID, and they didn't go to any shows when they were 12, and then like you were saying, like, not everybody got into music by the door of like house shows and like crowd surfing and stuff. Like, not everybody has that. Some people come straight in. That's what's weird to me about being in this band, is for so long I feel like I really clung to the identity of having like some sort of like tangible connection to a DIY community, and being like, but then I think about ways that those people trespass boundaries. Like, I went and saw a Law Dispute when I was like 16 years old, and the vocalist would look so freaked out because there's all these kids, you know, he's writing these songs about suicide, and kids would be like grabbing his shirt, and I was like at a show like reaching up at him, and he like couldn't get out because everybody was grabbing his shirt, and I was like, well, yeah, this is a show with like 50 people at it, and he's freaked out. I wonder what it would be like to be at a show with 15,000 people and they're all doing that to you. And that's never been my entry point, but for those kids, they have even less of an idea, you know? It's like,
you really have to get used to it, depending on genres or scenes. That's really. Just let's talk a little bit about your new record. So if we just have a little bit of time. The record. So you made lots of songs with lots of personal experiences. The songs are very personal, and I was wondering, how difficult is it for you? So everyone knows you have a huge connection, a strong friendship, but how difficult is it for you to do a song? For example, Emily, I'm sorry, with a personal topic where you guys are also working together and give something to the track. How difficult is it for you?
I don't know. I think we're all fans of each other's solo music, and I wouldn't say this music is more personal. So it doesn't. I feel like I just don't think about it.
Yeah.
You know, I
It's
think that's just like the style.
the reason
that's what it's gonna be,
that
and
we're
the reason,
making
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah. It doesn't take effort. If anything, like it would take effort to make something false. You know, like something impersonal is like more like a creative writing process.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's one example, I've heard it in another interview of you, that it was said that you wrote the verse for Not Strong Enough for Phoebe, the first verse. And it's like, I've heard it before the interview, and it was like, okay, it's a typical Phoebe Bridgers part. And afterwards, I was like, okay, how someone can write it for her? So it's depending on your strong friendship, or what do you think?
I think, well, I was going to say this too, is especially when we were, like, we came with the scaffolding, like the outlines of songs, and then we were working on them, like, not just the recording and the production, but also the lyrics and the arrangement at Shangri-La when we made the record. And something I was like, this is maybe one of the most powerful means of communication I have, maybe more so than conversation, because it it's not even that it's adding a pretense, it's like giving me space to be more creative in how I express like feelings, fears, anxieties, perceptions of my friends. And so I'm wondering if like it becomes easier to communicate with y'all when it is in the shared language of like songwriting, instead of me having to fumble through being an articulate friend. Because I'm like, I can definitely like hear, but I don't know, it happens in our like daily life too. Like I was speaking to Katie from Muna, and Katie was like, whoa, that thing you said that just like Phoebe would say that. Like y'all have clearly been around each other for so long that you're just like adopting each other's accents. Because I was like, whoa, dude, like in a very Cali accent. Yeah. But I have a Tennessee accent, so I was like, oh, it's neat to see how like unconsciously our like modes of communication get woven together, just because I want to be closer to these guys. I want to know them better, and so like of course I like subconsciously am like copying to the idiolect that they have. You know what I mean?
So it's so nice. So before we finish this interview, maybe one can't hear it on the microphone, but I think Muna just started. Yes. So let's just one last question, because you said you want to know the guys better. So Phoebe and Lucy. What do you think? How does touring and making music has an influence on your friendship? In positive and maybe also negative ways.
Zero negative.
But
touring is hard, and it's nice to be around people who are also used to it.
And outside of it benefiting me in the camaraderie aspect, I feel like grateful that we get. When you said in an interview the other day, you're like, the point of this band is so we can hang out. Yeah. And I'm like, that's very true. And like that, this tour gives me more opportunities to make new data points of memories with y'all is like benefiting our friendship in ways I can't imagine.
Yeah. What's nice about y'all is sometimes we'll have friends and the idea of them is more fun than actually being with them. And like being apart, I'm like, oh yeah, they're awesome. And then when I get a lot of time, I'm just like, oh, and now I see all these things that make me not want to spend time. But really, it's just the more time I spend with you guys, the more my life is happening.
That's what is happening. But yes, our lives are happening the most right now.
Yeah.
Das NOXX Interview.